Dr. Elena Vasquez never expected her routine blood analysis to change the world. Working late in her Berkeley laboratory, she stared at the impossible results displayed on her computer screen. The blood sample belonged to tech mogul Marcus Thornfield, age 73, yet every cellular marker indicated the biological age of a 30-year-old. She ran the test 3 more times. Each result remained consistent, defying everything she understood about human biology. The telomeres, protective DNA caps that shorten with age, were not just intact, but appeared to be regenerating. Mitochondrial function showed peak efficiency levels typically seen only in elite athletes decades younger. Elena's hands trembled as she cross-referenced the sample with Thornfield's medical history. 5 years ago, his records showed normal age-related cellular degradation. Something had fundamentally altered his biology at the molecular level. The laboratory security cameras hummed quietly in the corners, their red lights blinking like watchful eyes. Elena suddenly felt exposed, vulnerable. She quickly saved her findings to an encrypted drive, her mind racing with implications. If Thornfield had somehow reversed aging, others might possess the same technology. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop digging, Dr. Vasquez. Some discoveries are too dangerous." The message deleted itself before she could screenshot it. Elena's heart pounded as she realized she had stumbled upon something far bigger than a medical anomaly. This was evidence of a technology that could reshape human civilization, or destroy it. The question wasn't whether immortality was possible, but who controlled it and why they were keeping it secret. She gathered her research, knowing that tomorrow, everything would change. Elena spent sleepless nights researching other billionaires, searching for similar biological anomalies. Her investigation revealed a disturbing pattern. 17 of the world's wealthiest individuals showed signs of age reversal over the past 5 years, yet none had publicly acknowledged any breakthrough treatments. She discovered they all shared connections to a mysterious Swiss pharmaceutical company called Eternus Biotechnology. The company's public records were sparse, a small research facility focused on longevity studies. However, financial documents revealed billions in funding from a network of shell companies linked to the world's elite. Elena's colleague, Dr. James Morrison, noticed her obsessive research. "You're chasing shadows," he warned during their coffee break. "These people have access to the best medical care money can buy. Good genetics and expensive treatments explain everything." But Elena knew better. The cellular changes she observed weren't achievable through conventional medicine. These individuals had undergone fundamental biological transformation, their DNA rewritten to halt and reverse aging. The technology existed, hidden behind layers of corporate secrecy and legal protection. Her investigation led to Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a former Eternus researcher who had mysteriously disappeared 2 years earlier. Elena found traces of Tanaka's work in obscure scientific journals, theoretical papers about cellular regeneration, and genetic modification that seemed impossibly advanced. Late one evening, Elena received an encrypted email from an anonymous account. The message contained a single line: "Café Luna tomorrow 3 p.m. Come alone. Trust no one else." Attached was a photograph of Dr. Tanaka, very much alive, looking directly at the camera with eyes that held both fear and determination. Elena realized she was no longer investigating a medical mystery. She was uncovering a conspiracy that reached the highest levels of global power. Dr. Yuki Tanaka appeared smaller than Elena had imagined, hunched over a corner table at Café Luna, with nervous eyes constantly scanning the room. Her once confident demeanor from academic conferences had been replaced by the haunted look of someone carrying dangerous secrets. "They killed my research partner," Tanaka whispered without preamble. "Made it look like a heart attack, but David was healthier than men half his age. He wanted to publish our findings, make the treatment available to everyone." Elena leaned closer, her recorder hidden beneath her jacket. "What exactly did you discover at Eternus?" Tanaka's hands shook as she pulled out a small vial containing a clear, iridescent liquid. "This is compound X47, A single dose resets cellular aging by decades. We synthesized it from deep-sea organisms and modified it with CRISPR technology. The results were beyond our wildest predictions. The implications struck Elena like a physical blow. How many people have received this treatment? 47 individuals, all billionaires or heads of state. They call themselves the Eternal Circle. Each dose costs $50 million and requires monthly maintenance injections. The technology could be mass-produced for pennies, but they've classified it as a national security asset. Tanaka explained how Eternus operated under multiple government contracts, officially researching biological weapons defense, while secretly developing immortality treatments for the elite. The project had been running for 8 years, funded through black budgets and private investments. They're planning something bigger, Tanaka continued, her voice barely audible. Phase 2 involves selective population control. Why share immortality when you can eliminate competition instead? Elena felt the weight of the revelation. This wasn't just about life extension. It was about creating a permanent ruling class, while the rest of humanity remained mortal and expendable. I have proof, Tanaka said, sliding a flash drive across the table. Everything is on there. The flash drive contained terabytes of classified documents, video recordings, and financial records that painted a terrifying picture of systematic deception. Elena spent days analyzing the evidence in her apartment, afraid to return to her laboratory where she might be monitored. The documents revealed that Eternus Biotechnology was merely the public face of a vast network called Project Methuselah. The project operated across 17 countries, with research facilities hidden beneath legitimate pharmaceutical companies, university labs, and government installations. Video recordings showed billionaires undergoing treatment in sterile underground facilities. Elena watched in horror as 70-year-old tech moguls emerged from treatment chambers looking decades younger, their skin tight and eyes bright with renewed vitality. The transformation was complete within hours, defying every known law of biology. Financial records traced the money flow, defense contracts worth hundreds of billions, private investments from the world's wealthiest families, and payments to silence potential whistleblowers. The network included politicians, scientists, and military officials across the globe. Most disturbing were the population studies. Project Methuselah had been modeling global demographics, calculating optimal population levels for resource sustainability. Their projections assumed the immortal elite would need to reduce global population by 60% to maintain their lifestyle indefinitely. Elena discovered references to Phase 2 implementation, scheduled for the following year. The documents were heavily redacted, but fragments mentioned selective viral deployment and targeted genetic markers. The immortal billionaires weren't content with just living forever. They planned to eliminate most of humanity. Her laptop screen flickered, then displayed a message. Dr. Vasquez, you have seen too much. Cease your investigation immediately, or face consequences. The message vanished, leaving Elena staring at her reflection in the black screen. She realized she was no longer just investigating a conspiracy. She had become a target. Elena's apartment felt like a trap. Every shadow seemed to hide surveillance equipment. Every sound suggested approaching danger. She had been naive to think she could investigate the world's most powerful conspiracy from the safety of her home. Her phone rang at 3 a.m. The caller ID showed her sister's number, but the voice was unfamiliar. Dr. Vasquez, we have Maria. She's safe for now, but that depends entirely on your cooperation. Destroy all evidence and forget what you've learned. Elena's blood turned cold. Her sister lived 3,000 miles away in Miami, working as a teacher with no connection to Elena's research. The fact that they had reached Maria so quickly demonstrated the conspiracy's global reach and resources. What do you want? Elena managed to whisper. Complete silence. Return Dr. Tanaka's materials. Publish a retraction of any findings. Resume your normal research activities. Your sister will be released unharmed once we verify your compliance. The line went dead. Elena stared at the flash drive containing evidence that could expose the greatest crime in human history. But her sister's life hung in the balance. The immortal elite had made their position clear: absolute secrecy or devastating consequences. Elena spent the next hour destroying her research notes, wiping her computers, and preparing to surrender the evidence. But as she held the flash drive, she remembered Tanaka's words about Phase 2. Millions of innocent lives were at stake, not just Maria's. She made copies of the most crucial files, hiding them in multiple locations. If she was going to surrender the evidence, she would keep insurance. The conspiracy might silence her temporarily, but they couldn't erase the truth forever. As dawn broke over Berkeley, Elena prepared to meet her blackmailers, knowing she was walking into a web of deception that spanned the globe. The abandoned warehouse in Oakland's industrial district felt like a scene from Elena's worst nightmares. Concrete pillars cast long shadows in the dim light filtering through broken windows. She clutched the flash drive, her only bargaining chip in a game where the stakes were measured in human lives. 3 figures emerged from the shadows: 2 men in expensive suits and a woman whose ageless face suggested she might be one of the immortal elite. Elena recognized her from news articles: Victoria Blackwood, pharmaceutical heiress and rumored member of the Eternal Circle. "Dr. Vasquez." Blackwood's voice carried the confidence of someone accustomed to absolute power. "You've caused considerable inconvenience. Our organization values discretion above all else." Elena held up the drive. "Release my sister first." Blackwood smiled, a cold expression that never reached her eyes. "Your sister is safe, as promised. But first, we need assurance that you understand the gravity of your situation." A laptop screen descended from the warehouse ceiling, displaying surveillance footage of Elena's apartment, her laboratory, her favorite coffee shop. The message was clear. They had been watching her every move. "Project Methuselah represents humanity's greatest achievement," Blackwood continued. "Immortality isn't just a gift, it's a responsibility. Only those with the wisdom and resources to guide civilization deserve eternal life. The alternative is chaos, overpopulation, and the collapse of human society." Elena felt sick listening to the justification for global genocide disguised as philanthropy. "You're planning to kill billions of people." "We're planning to save humanity from itself," Blackwood corrected. "The current population is unsustainable. We're offering guided evolution toward a better future." Elena tossed the flash drive at Blackwood's feet. "There's your evidence. Now release Maria." Blackwood picked up the drive, examining it carefully. "This contains copies, doesn't it? You're more clever than we anticipated." The warehouse suddenly filled with armed guards. Elena realized she had walked into a trap with no escape. Elena awoke in a sterile white cell, her head pounding from whatever drug they had used to subdue her. The room contained only a bed, a sink, and a toilet, clearly designed for long-term imprisonment. A camera in the corner tracked her every movement with mechanical precision. Hours passed before the door opened. Dr. Tanaka entered. But something was wrong. Her eyes held a vacant quality, and her movements seemed robotic. She carried a medical tray containing syringes filled with the same iridescent liquid Elena had seen before. "Hello, Elena," Tanaka spoke in a monotone voice. "I'm here to offer you a choice." Elena backed against the wall. "What did they do to you?" "They gave me immortality," Tanaka replied, without emotion. "But immortality comes with conditions. Complete loyalty to the Eternal Circle. Absolute obedience to their directives. The neural modifications ensure compliance." Elena's heart sank as she understood. The immortality treatment didn't just extend life, it included mind control technology. The billionaires hadn't just bought eternal life, they had purchased eternal servants. "You can join us," Tanaka continued, holding up a syringe. "Become immortal, serve the greater good, help guide humanity's future. Or you can remain mortal and be eliminated as a security risk." Elena stared at the syringe containing liquid immortality. The choice seemed simple: eternal life as a slave, or immediate death as a free person. But she knew there had to be another option. What about my sister? Maria has already received the treatment. She's adapting well to her new purpose. Tanaka's emotionless delivery made the words even more horrifying. Elena realized the true scope of the conspiracy. The Eternal Circle wasn't just planning genocide. They were building an army of immortal slaves to enforce their vision of the future. Every person they recruited became another tool in their arsenal. She had to find a way to escape and expose the truth before more innocent people were converted. Elena's cell door opened again 3 days later, but this time her visitor was unexpected. A young man in maintenance coveralls entered quietly, his eyes alert and purposeful. Unlike Tanaka, his movements seemed natural and uncontrolled. "Dr. Vasquez, I'm Marcus Chen. I work for the Resistance," he whispered, quickly checking the corridor. "We've been monitoring Project Methuselah for 2 years. Elena could barely believe what she was hearing. There's a resistance? Former Eternus employees, military personnel who refused recruitment, family members of victims. We call ourselves the Mortality Movement. Marcus worked quickly to disable the cell's camera. The Immortality treatment has a weakness. It requires monthly maintenance doses. Without them, the neural control breaks down. He handed Elena a small device that looked like a smartphone. This contains everything we've gathered about Project Methuselah's operations. Facility locations, personnel lists, treatment schedules. We need you to get this information to the outside world. Elena clutched the device. How do we escape? The facility has underground tunnels connecting to the old subway system. But first, we need to reach the other prisoners. Your sister is being held 3 levels down, along with dozens of other recent recruits. Marcus explained that the Eternal Circle had been accelerating their recruitment program, targeting scientists, journalists, and government officials who might pose threats. Each new immortal became a loyal servant, expanding their network of control. The neural modifications aren't permanent, Marcus continued. If we can interrupt the treatment cycle and administer the antidote we've developed, we can free their minds. Elena felt hope for the first time since her capture. The conspiracy seemed invincible, but every system had vulnerabilities. The immortal elite's greatest strength, their need for regular treatments, might also be their downfall. "What's the plan?" she asked. Marcus smiled grimly. "We're going to steal their immortality and give it back to humanity." The underground facility sprawled beneath San Francisco like a technological ant colony. Marcus led Elena through maintenance tunnels lined with cables and pipes that fed the Immortality production complex above. The scale of the operation was staggering. Laboratories, treatment centers, and holding facilities that could process thousands of people. "They've been building this for 20 years, Marcus explained as they navigated the maze of corridors. "Every major city has a facility. They're preparing for global implementation of Phase 2. Elena's tablet displayed the facility's layout, highlighting security checkpoints and guard rotations. The Mortality movement had been planning this infiltration for months, waiting for the right moment to strike. Her capture had provided the perfect opportunity. They reached a ventilation grate overlooking the main laboratory. Below, dozens of scientists worked on production lines, synthesizing immortality compounds with industrial efficiency. Robotic systems filled vials with the iridescent liquid while quality control stations tested each batch. "They're producing enough for 10,000 doses per day," Elena whispered in horror. "This isn't just about the elite anymore." Marcus nodded grimly. "Phase 2 begins next month. They plan to offer immortality to selected populations, military leaders, key politicians, influential media figures. Anyone who accepts becomes part of their network." Elena watched the production process, understanding the true scope of the conspiracy. The Eternal Circle wasn't planning to rule over mortal humans. They were planning to convert humanity into an immortal slave species under their absolute control. "The antidote production lab is on the next level," Marcus continued. "We need to synthesize enough doses to free the prisoners and create a stockpile for future operations." As they moved deeper into the facility, Elena realized they weren't just attempting a rescue mission. They were launching the first strike in a war between mortality and immortality, freedom and slavery, humanity and its would-be gods. The future of human civilization hung in the balance. The antidote production laboratory was a mirror image of the Immortality facility above, but instead of creating eternal servitude, it offered the promise of freedom. Elena worked alongside Marcus and 2 other resistance members, following formulas developed by escaped Eternus scientists. The neural control system relies on specific protein modifications, Dr. Sarah Kim explained as she calibrated the synthesis equipment. Our antidote disrupts those modifications and restores normal brain function. Elena marveled at the complexity of the Immortality treatment. It wasn't just life extension, it was complete biological and neurological re-engineering. The Eternal Circle had essentially created a new species of human, one designed for absolute obedience. How many people have they converted? Elena asked. Our estimates suggest over 5,000 worldwide, Marcus replied. Politicians, military officers, media executives, scientists, they've been building a shadow government of immortal loyalists for years. The antidote synthesis required precise timing and temperature control. Each batch took 6 hours to complete and could treat 50 people. Elena realized they were racing against time. If the Eternal Circle discovered their operation, they would move the prisoners or accelerate the conversion process. We've identified your sister's location, Dr. Kim announced, checking her tablet. She's in the conditioning center with 43 other recent converts. They're scheduled for final neural modification tomorrow morning. Elena's hands trembled as she worked. Maria had been in the facility for less than a week, which meant her neural modifications might still be reversible, but they had to reach her before the final treatment made the changes permanent. The conditioning center has heavy security, Marcus warned. We'll need a distraction to get inside. Elena looked at the vials of antidote they had produced. Each one represented hope for freedom, a chance to break the chains of immortal slavery. What kind of distraction? Marcus smiled. We're going to give them a taste of their own medicine. The conditioning center resembled a high-tech prison, with individual cells housing the newest recruits to the Eternal Circle's immortal army. Elena peered through the observation window at her sister, who sat motionless on a metal bench, staring at nothing with vacant eyes. The neural conditioning process takes 72 hours, Dr. Kim whispered. After that, free will is permanently suppressed. Your sister still has a chance. Marcus had created their distraction by triggering a false alarm in the main laboratory, drawing security personnel away from the conditioning center. They had perhaps 30 minutes before the ruse was discovered. Elena entered Maria's cell, her heart breaking at her sister's blank expression. The woman who had once been full of laughter and passion now showed no recognition, no emotion, no spark of humanity. Maria, it's Elena. I'm here to help you. She prepared the antidote injection, hoping the treatment wasn't too late. The injection site showed the telltale marks of Immortality treatment, small puncture wounds that glowed faintly with bioluminescent markers. Elena administered the antidote, watching for any sign of response. Minutes passed. Then Maria blinked, confusion replacing the vacant stare. Elena? Where? What happened to me? Relief flooded through Elena as she helped her sister stand. I'll explain later. Right now, we need to get out of here. They moved through the conditioning center, administering antidotes to other prisoners. Each successful treatment felt like a small victory against the conspiracy that threatened human freedom. Teachers, journalists, doctors, and government workers all had been targeted for conversion. The security alarm has been reset, Marcus's voice crackled through their communicators. We have 5 minutes before they discover the breach. Elena looked at the remaining prisoners they couldn't save in time. 43 people had been freed, but dozens more remained in various stages of conditioning. The Mortality movement had won a battle, but the war was far from over. As they escaped through the maintenance tunnels, Elena clutched the evidence that could expose Project Methuselah to the world. Elena stood before a packed auditorium at UC Berkeley, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. News crews from around the world had gathered after she released portions of her evidence online, causing global shockwaves. Ladies and gentlemen, what I'm about to show you will fundamentally change our understanding of power, mortality, and human nature itself, she began, her voice carrying to the back of the room. The presentation began with cellular analysis showing impossible age reversal in billionaires. Gasps echoed through the auditorium as Elena displayed before and after medical scans, financial records linking the elite to Eternus biotechnology, and video footage of underground treatment facilities. For 8 years, the world's wealthiest individuals have possessed technology that grants virtual immortality, Elena continued. They have used this advantage to consolidate power while planning the systematic elimination of most of humanity. The evidence was overwhelming. Documents showed Phase 2 preparations, population reduction models, and the neural control technology that turned immortal subjects into obedient servants. Elena played audio recordings of Eternal Circle meetings where they discussed humanity as if it were livestock to be managed. The immortality treatment exists, it works, and it could be mass-produced for the cost of a cup of coffee, Elena declared. But instead of sharing this gift with humanity, they have weaponized it for control. Questions erupted from the audience. Reporters demanded verification, scientists questioned the biological impossibility, and government officials called for immediate investigation. Elena had anticipated every objection, providing peer-reviewed analysis and independent confirmation of her findings. The mortality movement has developed an antidote to the neural control system, she announced. We can free those who have been converted and prevent future enslavement. But we need global cooperation to stop Phase 2 implementation. As Elena concluded her presentation, she knew there was no going back. The secret was out, and the world would never be the same. The question now was whether humanity would unite against its immortal oppressors or fragment into chaos. The revelation of Project Methuselah triggered unprecedented global upheaval. Within hours of Elena's presentation, governments worldwide launched emergency sessions while stock markets crashed and social media exploded with conspiracy theories and demands for action. President Sarah Chen addressed the American people from the Oval Office, her face grave with the weight of confirmation. We have verified Dr. Vasquez's evidence through independent intelligence sources. The immortality conspiracy is real, and we are taking immediate action to protect our citizens. Similar announcements echoed from capitals around the world. The European Union called for an emergency summit, while the United Nations Security Council convened an unprecedented closed session. Military forces were mobilized to secure suspected Eternus facilities, though many had already been evacuated. Elena watched the global response from a secure location, protected by international security forces. The mortality movement had prepared for this moment, distributing evidence to multiple governments simultaneously to prevent suppression. The truth was too widespread to contain. 17 world leaders have gone missing, Marcus reported, monitoring intelligence feeds. All suspected members of the Eternal Circle. They've activated some kind of contingency plan. The missing leaders included tech moguls, pharmaceutical executives, and political figures from every continent. Their disappearance suggested a coordinated retreat to hidden facilities where they could continue their operations beyond government reach. They're not giving up, Elena realized. They're regrouping for a counterattack. News reports showed massive protests in major cities as people demanded access to immortality technology. Some demonstrations turned violent as crowds stormed pharmaceutical company headquarters and government buildings. The revelation had created global instability that the Eternal Circle might exploit. Phase 2 might not be population reduction anymore, Elena told the assembled intelligence officers. They might be planning to let humanity destroy itself while they wait in their underground bunkers. The immortal elite had spent decades preparing for this moment. They wouldn't surrender their advantage easily. The Eternal Circle's response came at dawn, on the third day after Elena's revelation. Coordinated attacks struck government facilities, research laboratories, and media centers across 6 continents. The attackers moved with inhuman precision and showed no regard for their own safety, clear signs of neural conditioning. Elena watched in horror as news feeds showed immortal agents infiltrating the Pentagon, the Kremlin, and the European Parliament. Their enhanced physical capabilities and complete loyalty made them nearly unstoppable. Decades of preparation had given the conspiracy sleeper agents in every major institution. They're not just attacking, they're retrieving something, Marcus observed as they analyzed the assault patterns. Every target has been a data storage facility or research center. The realization struck Elena like a physical blow. They're destroying the evidence and stealing the antidote formulas. Without proof, this becomes just another conspiracy theory. Emergency broadcasts showed chaos in major cities as immortal agents systematically eliminated key witnesses and researchers. The Mortality movement's safe houses came under attack by operatives who seemed to know their exact locations. The conspiracy had been monitoring their communications all along. "We need to get you to the backup facility," Marcus urged, but Elena shook her head. "Running won't stop them. We need to expose their weakness." Elena pulled up the biological data she had memorized. The immortality treatment requires specific environmental conditions to remain stable. If we can disrupt their supply chain, the Eternal Circle's greatest strength was also their vulnerability. Their immortal agents needed regular treatments to maintain their enhanced capabilities and neural conditioning. Without access to the maintenance doses, they would begin to deteriorate within days. "The primary production facility is in Switzerland," Elena continued. "If we can shut it down, their entire network starts to collapse." Marcus looked skeptical. "That facility is probably the most heavily defended location on Earth right now." Elena smiled grimly. "Then we'll need to be very clever about how we approach it." The war for humanity's future was about to enter its decisive phase. The Eternis biotechnology facility in the Swiss Alps resembled a cross between a pharmaceutical plant and a military fortress. Built into the mountainside with multiple underground levels, it represented the heart of the Immortality conspiracy. Elena studied satellite imagery from the Resistance's mobile command center, hidden in an abandoned monastery 20 miles away. "The facility produces 90% of the global immortality supply," Dr. Kim explained, pointing to thermal imaging that showed massive energy consumption. Shutting it down would cripple their entire network within weeks. Elena examined the security measures: automated defense systems, immortal guards with enhanced reflexes, and environmental barriers that made direct assault impossible. The Eternal Circle had learned from their previous vulnerabilities. "We can't fight our way in," Marcus concluded, after reviewing tactical assessments. "But we might not need to." Elena had been studying the facility's waste management systems, looking for any weakness in their biological containment protocols. The Immortality compound was incredibly toxic in its raw form. A single contamination event could shut down production for months. "They have to dispose of failed batches somehow," she reasoned. "If we can introduce our antidote into their waste processing system, it might contaminate their entire production line." The plan was dangerous and required precise timing. They would need to infiltrate the facility's external waste treatment plant, introduce the antidote compound, and escape before the contamination was detected. Success would cripple the conspiracy's ability to maintain their immortal army. "The window is narrow," Dr. Kim warned. "Once they detect the contamination, they'll switch to backup facilities. We'll only get one chance." Elena looked at her team of volunteers, scientists, former military personnel, and ordinary people who had lost loved ones to the conspiracy. They were humanity's last hope against an enemy that had transcended mortality itself. "Then we'd better make it count," she said. The waste treatment facility sat in a valley below the main Eternis complex, connected by a series of underground pipes that carried contaminated materials for processing. Elena's team approached through the forest at midnight, using thermal camouflage to avoid detection systems. "Remember, we have exactly 18 minutes before the next security sweep," Marcus whispered as they reached the facility's perimeter. The antidote needs 12 minutes to fully integrate with their processing system. Elena carried the concentrated antidote in a specially designed container that would dissolve upon contact with the facility's waste stream. Dr. Kim had spent weeks perfecting the formula to ensure it would contaminate every batch of Immortality compound produced over the next month. The facility's security was lighter than expected. Most resources had been diverted to protecting the main complex above. Elena's team disabled the perimeter sensors and accessed the waste processing center through a maintenance entrance. Inside, massive tanks churned with the byproducts of Immortality production. The smell was overwhelming, a mixture of chemical solvents and organic decay that made Elena's eyes water. She located the main processing tank and prepared to introduce the antidote. "Contact," Marcus reported through their communication system. "Two guards approaching from the north entrance." Elena worked quickly, connecting her container to the tank's input valve. The antidote began flowing into the system, mixing with the waste stream that would be recycled back into the production process. Within hours, every new batch of Immortality compound would be contaminated. 30 seconds, Marcus warned, as footsteps echoed through the facility. Elena finished the connection and activated the timer that would release the full antidote dose. As they prepared to escape, alarms began blaring throughout the complex. Their infiltration had been detected, but the damage was already done. "Run," Elena commanded, leading her team toward their extraction point as security forces converged on the facility. The counterattack against Immortality had begun. The contamination spread through Eternus Biotechnology's production system faster than Elena had anticipated. Within 6 hours, every Immortality compound produced at the Swiss facility contained her antidote, creating a cascading failure throughout the Eternal Circle's global network. Elena monitored the crisis from the Resistance's command center, watching as reports flooded in from around the world. Immortal agents began experiencing system failures. Their enhanced reflexes slowed, their neural conditioning wavered, and their absolute loyalty cracked. "Berlin facility reports complete production shutdown," Dr. Kim announced. "Tokyo and São Paulo are following emergency protocols. They're trying to switch to backup supplies, but the contamination is spreading faster than they can contain it." The Eternal Circle had built their empire on the assumption that their Immortality technology was unbreakable. Elena's antidote proved that even gods could bleed. Without regular maintenance doses, their immortal army was reverting to normal human limitations. News broadcasts showed chaos in major cities as immortal agents suddenly began questioning their orders. Government officials who had been secretly converted started remembering their original loyalties. The neural control system was breaking down on a global scale. "We're receiving surrender requests from 17 facilities," Marcus reported. Local security forces are overwhelming them as their immortal guards lose their advantages. Elena felt a mixture of triumph and sadness as she watched the conspiracy collapse. Thousands of people were being freed from neural conditioning, but the technology that could have benefited all humanity was being destroyed in the process. "The main facility is going into lockdown," Dr. Kim warned. "They're activating some kind of self-destruct sequence." Elena realized the Eternal Circle's leaders would rather destroy their Immortality technology than let it fall into the wrong hands. They were willing to sacrifice their own eternal life to prevent humanity from achieving equality. "We need to stop them," Elena declared. "That technology belongs to everyone." The Eternus facility's self-destruct sequence gave Elena's team exactly 47 minutes to reach the main laboratory before the entire complex was vaporized. They raced through corridors filled with emergency lighting as automated systems prepared to erase all evidence of the Immortality conspiracy. Elena led a strike team of resistance fighters through the facility's upper levels, following blueprints provided by escaped Eternus employees. Their goal was the central data core where the complete Immortality formula was stored. Humanity's only chance to preserve the technology for ethical use. "Security checkpoint ahead," Marcus warned as they approached the laboratory section. "2 immortal guards, but they're showing signs of system degradation." The guards moved sluggishly, their enhanced reflexes compromised by the antidote contamination. Elena's team subdued them with minimal resistance, a stark contrast to the superhuman opponents they had faced days earlier. Inside the main laboratory, Elena found Victoria Blackwood standing before a massive computer terminal, her ageless face showing the first signs of mortality as the immortality treatment began to fail. She looked smaller somehow, more human and vulnerable. "Dr. Vasquez," Blackwood's voice had lost its commanding authority. "You've destroyed everything we built, centuries of progress, erased by your misguided idealism." Elena approached the terminal where Blackwood was attempting to delete the Immortality database. "You could have shared this gift with humanity. Instead, you chose to become tyrants." "Humanity isn't ready for immortality," Blackwood insisted, her fingers hovering over the deletion key. "Without guidance, without control, eternal life becomes eternal chaos. We were saving the species from itself." Elena saw the fear in Blackwood's eyes. Not fear of death, but fear of losing control. The immortal elite had convinced themselves that their tyranny was benevolent, that slavery was salvation. "Maybe humanity isn't ready," Elena agreed, reaching for the terminal. "But that's our choice to make." With seconds remaining before the self-destruct sequence activated, Elena fought to preserve the knowledge that could transform human civilization forever. Elena's fingers flew across the terminal as the countdown reached its final minutes. The Immortality database contained decades of research, not just the treatment formula, but detailed studies of cellular regeneration, genetic modification, and neural enhancement. This knowledge could revolutionize medicine if used ethically. 20 seconds to detonation, the facility's automated voice announced as Elena completed the data transfer to her portable drive. Victoria Blackwood made one final attempt to stop her, but the failing immortality treatment had reduced her to normal human capabilities. Marcus restrained her as Elena secured the precious data that represented humanity's future. "You don't understand what you're unleashing," Blackwood gasped as they prepared to evacuate. "Immortality without wisdom leads to stagnation. Eternal life without purpose becomes eternal suffering." Elena paused at the laboratory door, looking back at the woman who had helped orchestrate the greatest conspiracy in human history. "Maybe you're right, but that's a choice humanity deserves to make for itself." They escaped through the facility's emergency tunnels as explosions rocked the mountainside above. The Eternus complex collapsed in a controlled demolition that erased most evidence of the Immortality program. But Elena carried the essential knowledge with her, preserved for future generations. The Resistance's extraction team met them at the tunnel exit, where helicopters waited to carry them to safety. As they flew away from the burning facility, Elena watched smoke rise from what had been the heart of the immortal conspiracy. "What happens now?" Marcus asked, exhaustion evident in his voice. Elena clutched the data drive containing humanity's greatest discovery. The immortality formula was safe, but the real challenge was just beginning. How do you give eternal life to 8 billion people? How do you prevent the technology from creating new forms of inequality? "Now we figure out how to do this right," Elena replied, knowing the hardest part of their mission lay ahead. 6 months after the collapse of Project Methuselah, Elena stood before the United Nations General Assembly, addressing representatives from every nation on Earth. The immortality data had been shared with the global scientific community, sparking the greatest collaborative research effort in human history. "The technology exists to extend human life indefinitely," Elena announced to the packed assembly hall. "But implementation must be gradual, ethical, and available to all humanity regardless of wealth or status." The months following the conspiracy's exposure had been chaotic. Governments struggled to process thousands of freed immortal agents, many suffering from severe psychological trauma after years of neural conditioning. The global economy fluctuated wildly as markets tried to price in the implications of potential immortality. "We propose a 3-phase implementation plan," Elena continued, outlining the framework developed by the International Immortality Commission. Phase 1 focuses on treating terminal illnesses and genetic disorders. Phase 2 addresses age-related diseases. Phase 3 offers life extension to healthy populations. The plan emphasized safety, equality, and voluntary participation. Unlike the Eternal Circle's forced conversion program, the new Immortality initiative would respect individual choice and cultural values. Some communities might choose traditional lifespans, while others embraced eternal life. Dr. Tanaka, now fully recovered from her neural conditioning, served as the Commission's chief researcher. Her first-hand experience with both the benefits and dangers of immortality technology provided crucial insights for ethical implementation. The neural control system has been completely eliminated from our formulations, Tanaka reported to the Assembly. The new treatment extends life without compromising free will or individual autonomy. Elena watched as delegates debated the proposal, knowing that humanity stood at a crossroads. The choice between mortality and immortality would define the species' future. But unlike the Eternal Circle's vision of controlled evolution, this choice belonged to everyone. The age of democratic immortality was about to begin. 2 years after the immortality revelation, Elena walked through the streets of Geneva, observing how the world had adapted to its new reality. The first generation of ethical immortality treatments had been administered to terminal patients, offering hope where none had existed before. The changes were subtle, but profound. Medical research had accelerated exponentially as scientists no longer raced against aging and death. Educational systems evolved to accommodate learners who might study for centuries. Economic models struggled to adapt to workers who would never retire. The social implications are staggering, Dr. Kim observed as they visited the International Immortality Research Center. Marriage contracts now include century-long terms. Insurance companies are redefining risk assessment. Religious organizations debate the theological implications of defeating death. Elena nodded, understanding that immortality technology was reshaping every aspect of human civilization. The transition wouldn't be smooth. Early adopters faced discrimination from those who chose mortality, while traditional communities struggled with members who selected eternal life. We're seeing the formation of immortal enclaves, Marcus reported during their weekly briefing. Communities where everyone has received the treatment. They're developing their own cultures, separate from mortal society. The possibility of humanity splitting into two distinct species, mortal and immortal, had been anticipated, but remained troubling. Elena had hoped the technology would unite humanity, not divide it further. Public opinion polls show 63% support for universal immortality access, Dr. Tanaka added, but implementation remains voluntary. About 40% of eligible populations have chosen to begin treatment. Elena reviewed the global statistics with mixed feelings. The immortality conspiracy had been defeated, the technology democratized, and individual choice preserved. Yet new challenges emerged daily as humanity grappled with the implications of conquering death. The future remained unwritten, but at least it belonged to everyone. Despite the official end of Project Methuselah, Elena discovered that fragments of the original conspiracy had survived underground. Rogue immortal agents, still loyal to the Eternal Circle's vision, worked to destabilize the democratic immortality program and restore their former masters to power. We've identified at least 12 active cells, Marcus reported during an emergency briefing at the Mortality Movement's new headquarters. They're targeting immortality research facilities and attempting to steal treatment supplies. Elena studied intelligence reports showing coordinated attacks across 3 continents. The surviving immortal agents retained their enhanced capabilities, but lacked the centralized leadership that had made the original conspiracy so effective. They operated as terrorists now, desperate to reclaim their lost paradise. Their goal appears to be creating scarcity, Dr. Kim analyzed. If they can limit immortality access, they might recreate the elite advantage that defined the original conspiracy. The attacks had already caused significant damage. A research facility in Mumbai was destroyed, setting back treatment development by months. Supply convoys in Africa were hijacked, denying immortality access to populations that needed it most. The democratic vision was under assault. "We need to stop them permanently," Elena declared, knowing that the Mortality Movement's mission wasn't complete. "As long as these cells exist, they threaten everything we've built." The resistance that had once fought against immortal tyranny now fought to protect immortal democracy. Elena assembled teams of former conspiracy victims, scientists committed to ethical research, and security personnel trained to combat enhanced opponents. "They're planning something big," Marcus warned, reviewing intercepted communications. References to Phoenix Protocol and restoration of natural order. Whatever they're planning, it's scheduled for next month. Elena realized that defeating the Eternal Circle had been only the beginning. The war between tyranny and freedom would continue as long as some believed that immortality belonged to the few rather than the many. The surviving Eternal Circle operatives had been more resourceful than Elena anticipated. Intelligence reports revealed that Victoria Blackwood had escaped custody during a prisoner transport, along with 17 other high-ranking conspiracy members. They had vanished into a network of hidden facilities that predated Project Methuselah. "Phoenix Protocol is a resurrection plan," Dr. Tanaka explained as she decoded intercepted communications. "They're attempting to rebuild the immortality monopoly using backup research data and stolen treatment supplies." Elena studied the evidence with growing alarm. The escaped conspirators had access to the original neural conditioning technology, which meant they could create new immortal slaves to serve their cause. Worse, they had learned from their previous mistakes and were operating with greater secrecy. "They're targeting specific populations," Marcus reported. "Military personnel, government officials, media executives, anyone with influence or authority. The conversion process has been streamlined. They can create loyal, immortal agents in hours rather than days." The Phoenix Protocol represented everything Elena had fought against, refined and improved through bitter experience. The new conspiracy was smaller but more focused, aiming to infiltrate existing power structures rather than replace them entirely. "We've lost contact with Senator Williams," Dr. Kim announced grimly. "She was scheduled to testify about immortality regulation next week. Now her staff reports she's taken an unexpected vacation." Elena recognized the pattern. Key figures in the democratic immortality movement were disappearing, only to return days later with subtle changes in behavior and policy positions. The neural conditioning was becoming more sophisticated, harder to detect. "They're not trying to rule openly anymore," Elena realized. "They're creating a shadow network of immortal agents within existing governments and institutions." The Eternal Circle had learned that direct confrontation led to exposure and defeat. Their new strategy was infiltration and gradual subversion, turning democracy against itself from within. Elena knew they had to act quickly before the Phoenix Protocol achieved critical mass. 5 years after her first discovery of impossible blood work, Elena stood in her new laboratory at the Global Immortality Monitoring Center, watching data streams from around the world. The Democratic Immortality Program had succeeded beyond her wildest dreams. Over 2 billion people now had access to life extension treatments. But vigilance remained essential. The Phoenix Protocol had been disrupted but not eliminated. Rogue immortal agents still operated in the shadows, seeking to restore their former master's vision of controlled evolution. Elena's team worked constantly to identify and neutralize these threats. "New anomaly detected in the Singapore facility, Dr. Oz," Kim reported. "Production irregularities suggest possible infiltration." Elena nodded, dispatching a response team to investigate. The price of immortal freedom was eternal vigilance against those who would exploit the technology for power and control. Her sister Maria had chosen immortality, and now worked as a teacher, educating children who might live for centuries. Marcus led the security division, protecting the democratic immortality infrastructure from those who would corrupt it. Dr. Tanaka continued her research, developing new treatments that enhanced life without compromising human autonomy. The world had changed in ways both wonderful and terrifying. Immortal artists created masterpieces across centuries. Scientists pursued research projects that spanned millennia. But new forms of inequality emerged as immortal and mortal populations diverged culturally and economically. The latest polls show 87% satisfaction with the Immortality program, Marcus reported during their weekly briefing. But we're seeing increased tension in mixed communities. Elena understood that humanity was still adapting to its new reality. The technology that could have united the species in eternal life sometimes divided it instead. But the choice remained with individuals, not imposed by immortal tyrants. As she prepared to leave the laboratory, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this crossroads. The conspiracy had been defeated, but the challenges of immortal democracy were just beginning. Future generations would face questions she couldn't imagine, make choices that would echo through eternity. But they would face those challenges as free beings, not slaves to immortal masters. That made all the difference in the world.